Welcome back, everyone. Ready to dive into something pretty fascinating today.
Always excited to learn something new.
Okay, cool. So today we're taking a deep dive into Stoicism, specifically with Jonas Salzgeber's The Little Book of Stoicism. Ever heard of it?
Yeah, actually, I've seen it around, but haven't gotten a chance to really dig in.
Well, you're in for a treat.
Yeah.
And to make it even more fun, you and I are going to kind of tackle it together. Take turns reading chapters like a shared book club experience.
I love that idea. It's like we're curled up on the couch with a good book and a cup of tea.
Exactly. All right, so I'll kick things off with the introduction. Here we go. The power of philosophy to blunt the blows of fate is beyond belief. No missile can settle in her body. She is well protected and impenetrable. She spoils the force of some missiles and wards them off with the loose folds of her dress as if they had no power to harm. Others she dashes aside and throws them back with such force that they rebound upon the sender. Farewell.
Whoa, talk about a powerful image. It's like philosophy becomes this shield deflecting all the hardships life throws at us. I love that visual.
It really captures the essence of Stoicism, when you say, that resilience, that inner strength.
Absolutely. It's not about pretending life's challenges don't exist, but facing them head on, but with a sense of calm and composure.
Exactly. You're getting it. Okay, so ready for chapter 1. It's called The Promise of Stoic Philosophy. Want to take this one?
Yeah, let me give it a shot. Chapter 1, The Promise of Stoic Philosophy. No tree becomes deep-rooted and sturdy unless strong winds blow against it. This shaking and pulling is what makes the tree tighten its grip and plant its roots more securely. The fragile trees are those grown in a sunny valley.
Ooh, that's a good one. It's like facing challenges actually makes us stronger, just like the tree's roots growing deeper because of the wind, almost like becoming unbreakable.
Right. And Jonas goes on to explain how the Stoics didn't see philosophy as just, some abstract thing. It was a practical tool for living a better life. He even quotes Epictetus, who compared philosophy to a craft, like carpentry or sculpture.
Interesting. So it's not just thinking about life, but actively shaping it.
Exactly. And then Jonas introduces two key things Stoicism offers: eudaimonia and emotional resilience.
Eudaimonia. Now, that's a word I haven't heard in a while. What does that even mean? In the context of Stoicism, I mean.
Well, it's often translated as flourishing or living a good life, but it's not about like fleeting happiness or being successful in the eyes of the world. It's about living in a virtuous way, aligned with nature and reason. It's a deeper kind of well-being.
Ah, I see. And that ties into emotional resilience, doesn't it?
Exactly. It's not about pretending we'll never feel sad or angry. It's about having the inner strength to face those emotions without being completely overwhelmed by them.
So we've got this idea of inner strength, like that unbreakable tree, and the promise of a flourishing life. But how did the Stoics actually go about achieving this?
That's where Jonas brings in this concept he calls the Stoic happiness triangle.
A triangle, huh? All right, I'm intrigued. What are the 3 points?
Okay, so first we have live with arete.
Arete. Another new word for me. What's that all about?
It's a Greek word that basically means virtue or excellence. But it's more than just, being a good person. It's about constantly striving to be the best version of ourselves, expressing our highest potential in every moment.
I like that. Not just following rules, but actually living by our deepest values. What about the second point?
That's focus on what you can control.
That rings a bell. It's like that image of the tree and the wind, right? We can't control the wind, but we can make our roots stronger.
You got it. The Stoics believe true freedom comes from accepting the things we can't change and focusing on what we can influence.
Which leads us to the third point of the triangle. Take responsibility.
Exactly. Jonas writes, the Stoics believe that good and bad stem from our own judgments and actions, not from external circumstances. We are responsible for our own happiness and well-being.
It's about owning our choices, the good and the bad, right? It's about acknowledging that we have the power to create our own happiness.
Absolutely. And taken together, these 3 principles, arte, focusing on what we control, and taking responsibility, form the foundation of Stoicism.
I'm starting to see how it all fits together. It's like a blueprint for building a resilient and fulfilling life. Okay, what's up next on our reading list?
Chapter 2, a quick history lesson. We get to dive into the origins of Stoicism and meet some of the key figures. Want to take this one?
You bet. Let's meet the minds behind this fascinating philosophy. Shipwrecked. A Phoenician merchant named Zeno of Citium had lost his entire fortune. His ship, laden with purple dye murex from Phoenicia, had sunk in a storm off the Athenian coast. All was lost. or so it seemed.
A shipwreck, huh? That's quite a start for a philosophy.
It is, and this misfortune became a turning point for Zeno. Losing everything led him to the teachings of Socrates in Athens.
Wow. So from the wreckage of his material possessions, Stoicism was born.
You could say that. And then we're introduced to some other big names in Stoicism, like Seneca the Younger, Epictetus, even a Roman emperor, Marcus Aurelius.
It's amazing how Stoicism appealed to people from such different walks of life. It really does feel universal, doesn't it?
It really does. And I think Epictetus's story is particularly interesting. He started as a slave, gained his freedom, and became a renowned Stoic philosopher. That really speaks to how much inner strength can flourish despite external circumstances.
It really underscores that Stoic idea that true happiness isn't tied to material things or social status.
Exactly. Okay, you ready to move on to chapter 3? This one is called the Stoic Happiness Triangle, and I'm curious to see how Jonas breaks down those core principles in more detail.
Let's dive in. Chapter 3 is where we really start to see the framework of Stoicism. I'll take this one. Before we look at specific Stoic practices, let's first develop a mental model that helps us wrap our heads around the complexity of this philosophy. I call it the Stoic Happiness Triangle.
A mental model. I like that. It gives us something to visualize.
Right, and he points out that there's no, easy, one-size-fits-all formula for Stoic happiness. This triangle is more like a way to understand how those core principles connect.
Okay, I'm ready for a deeper dive into those 3 points again.
All right, so we have live with arte, focus on what you can control, and take responsibility. Starting with arete. Arete is an ancient Greek word that roughly translates to virtue or excellence. But it means much more than that. It means expressing the highest version of yourself in every moment.
So not just being good, but tapping into our full potential, really striving to be our best selves.
Yes. And Jonas connects this to living in accordance with nature. The Stoics believed that as humans, we are both rational and social creatures, and to live a good life means aligning with that true nature.
Ah, so it's like recognizing our place in the bigger picture and how important that is for our own well-being.
Precisely. Okay, now focus on what you can control. There are things we can control: our thoughts, actions, and choices, and things we can't: external events, other people's opinions, and even our own health. True freedom, the Stoics argue, comes from focusing our energy on what we can influence and accepting what we can't.
Powerful stuff. It's not about becoming passive, but rather directing our energy towards what we can actually change.
Right. No point stressing over things we can't do anything about.
Yeah.
And finally, we have take responsibility. Jonas writes, the Stoics believed that good and bad stem from our own judgments and actions, not from external circumstances. We are responsible for our own happiness and well-being.
It's about owning our choices and knowing we have the power to shape our own lives.
Exactly. And together, these three are ete, focus, responsibility. That's the Stoic path to happiness and fulfillment.
This triangle is really helping me wrap my head around Stoicism. It's like a blueprint, a guide. Okay, what's next?
Chapter 4, the villain. Negative emotions get in the way. This one explores how Stoicism helps us deal with our emotions. Want to take this one?
Absolutely. Emotions can be powerful, so I'm ready to see what Stoicism have to say about them. Okay, so chapter 4, the villain. Negative emotions get in the way. This should be interesting. Emotions can definitely run wild sometimes.
They really can. Let's hear what Jonas has to say.
When we're unaware of what's going on inside us, our emotions run wild. We become like a ship without a rudder, tossed to and fro by every wind that blows.
Ooh, I like that analogy. So true. It's easy to get swept away by our emotions if we're not careful.
Exactly. And Jonas says the Stoics saw those negative emotions as, like, obstacles to living a good life.
So it's not about ignoring our emotions or pretending they don't exist?
Right. More about learning to manage them so they don't control us.
Okay, makes sense. But where do these negative emotions even come from?
Well, Jonas points to 2 main sources: desiring things that are outside our control and just a general lack of awareness.
Ah, I see. So wanting things we can't actually have. That's a recipe for frustration, for sure.
It is. When we tie our happiness to things like wealth or fame, we're setting ourselves up for disappointment. It's like giving away our power.
So the key is to shift our focus back to what we can control: our thoughts, our actions.
Exactly. And in the second source, lack of awareness, that's huge too.
Mm.
If we don't even realize what we're thinking and feeling, it's easy to get caught in a spiral of negativity.
It's like driving with your eyes closed. We need to be aware of our inner world to make good choices.
You got it. And Jonas actually offers some really practical techniques for becoming more aware and managing those emotions.
Like what? Always interested in learning new ways to stay grounded.
Well, he talks about challenging negative thoughts, seeing things from a different perspective, and practicing mindfulness. He even suggests this thing called negative visualization.
Negative visualization. That sounds a little counterintuitive. Isn't that focusing on the bad stuff?
I know, right? But Jonas says that mentally preparing for setbacks can actually lessen their impact, like a mental fire drill.
Ah, okay, I see. So we're not trying to ignore negative emotions, but we are equipping ourselves to handle them better.
Exactly. It's all about building that resilience. So, chapter 5. This one is called How to Practice Stoicism. And I'm really curious about the specific techniques Jonas suggests. Want to take it?
You bet. Let's get into the practical side of things. Chapter 5. How to practice Stoicism. All right, here we go. Jonas comes out strong. He says, most people fail to see that Stoicism is about more than just lofty thoughts and high ideals. It is first and foremost a practical philosophy of action.
Yes, I love that. It's not just about thinking about Stoicism, but actually living it. So what are some of those practical actions?
Well, he uses this really interesting analogy about accepting reality. He writes, imagine a dog tied to a moving cart. If the dog resists the pull of the cart, it will only choke itself. But if it chooses to run alongside the cart, it can move freely and even enjoy the ride.
Okay, I see where he's going with this. It's about how we often resist things we can't control, and that creates suffering.
Exactly. And Jonas says that by accepting things as they are, we can actually find a sense of peace and freedom, even in difficult situations.
So instead of fighting against reality, we learn to flow with it, like that dog running alongside the cart.
Right. And he goes on to talk about the power of remembering that everything is impermanent. He writes, everything in this world is in constant flux. Our possessions, our relationships, our bodies, and even our thoughts and feelings are all subject to change.
That's a core Stoic idea, right? The impermanence of everything. But how do we actually apply that to our lives?
Jonas suggests a few things. One is to really think about how temporary the things we value are. Like, our loved ones won't be with us forever. Our circumstances are always changing.
So by acknowledging that, we can appreciate the present moment more and maybe not cling so tightly to things we can't hold on to forever.
Yes. And it can help us worry less, too, because we realize we don't have ultimate control.
This is making me think about my own attachments and how they might be causing me some unnecessary stress.
It's a powerful realization, right? And Jonas also mentions that negative visualization we talked about before.
Right, that idea of mentally preparing for things to go wrong. It still feels a little strange, but I'm willing to give it a try.
Well, Jonas says that by contemplating those worst-case scenarios, we can actually lessen our fear of them. It's like we're mentally preparing for the possibility of things not working out, so we're not completely devastated if they do.
I can see how that could be helpful, sort of taking the sting out of potential failures.
Exactly. And it can also make us appreciate what we have even more. Like, if we imagine losing a loved one, it can make us more grateful for them being in our lives right now.
Okay, I'm starting to see the value in that. It's not about being pessimistic, but about using that mental exercise to build resilience and appreciate what we have. What else does Jonas suggest?
He talks about the idea of voluntary discomfort.
Voluntary discomfort. Now, that doesn't sound very fun.
I know, right? But Jonas explains that by intentionally putting ourselves in uncomfortable situations, we can actually build up our tolerance for difficult things and strengthen our self-discipline.
Okay, I'm curious. Give me an example.
He suggests things like taking cold showers or fasting for a period of time, or even sleeping on the floor instead of in a comfortable bed.
Ah, I see. So it's like intentionally facing discomfort so we're not so easily thrown off balance when challenges come up unexpectedly in life.
Exactly. It's like building up those mental and emotional muscles.
I think that's so important, especially in a world that's constantly trying to make us comfortable. It's like we're losing our ability to deal with discomfort.
That's a really good point. And Jonas goes on to suggest some other things too, like creating a stoic morning routine, reflecting on our actions at the end of each day, and surrounding ourselves with people who inspire us.
So it's about creating a life that supports those stoic principles.
Exactly. And he reminds us that consistency is key. Stoicism isn't a quick fix, it's an ongoing practice.
Okay, I'm feeling inspired to try some of these out. I think I might experiment with a stoic morning routine. What about you?
I'm intrigued by that negative visualization. I think I might try that. It could be a helpful tool for dealing with anxiety.
Awesome. Well, let's see what Chapter 6 has in store. This one is called Situational Practices. How to handle yourself when other people challenge you. Sounds relevant, right?
Definitely. Dealing with difficult people is something we all have to do. Let's see what Stoicism has to say about it. I'll take this one. The next time you find yourself face to face with someone who is testing your patience, remember this. You are not alone. We all encounter difficult people from time to time.
That's good to remember. It's easy to feel like we're the only ones struggling with difficult people, but
Yeah.
it really is a universal experience.
It is, and Jonas even quotes Marcus Aurelius. He wrote in his Meditations, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they can't tell good from evil."
Whoa, that's a bit harsh, isn't it?
I know, right? Sounds a little pessimistic. But I think what he's doing is just preparing himself for the reality that not everyone is going to be sunshine and rainbows.
So it's like a mental shield,
Yeah.
anticipating that we will encounter those difficult people so we're not caught off guard.
Exactly. And Jonas stresses that just because we accept that difficult people exist, it doesn't mean we have to put up with bad behavior.
Right, it's more about understanding that everyone's coming from their own place, with their own struggles.
Yes. And he gives some great practical tips for dealing with challenging people in a stoic way. He starts with the importance of assuming good intentions. Often people act out of ignorance or misunderstanding, not malice. So the next time someone says or does something that upsets you, try to assume the best about their intentions.
So give people the benefit of the doubt, even when it's hard.
Exactly. We don't always know what's going on in someone else's life. There might be reasons for their behavior that we're not aware of.
It's a good reminder that everyone's operating from their own perspective, just like we are.
Exactly. And Jonas goes on to say that we should focus on our own behavior rather than trying to change other people. He writes, "The only person you can truly control is yourself. So instead of wasting energy trying to change other people, focus on being the best version of yourself."
It's like the classic advice about focusing on what we can't control.
Right. We have the power to choose how we respond to challenging people, even if we can't control their actions.
So instead of getting caught up in trying to change someone else, we focus on our own thoughts, emotions, and actions.
Exactly. And Jonas encourages us to practice forgiveness, realizing that holding on to resentment only hurts us in the end. He writes, "Forgiveness is not about condoning bad behavior. It's about freeing yourself from the burden of anger and resentment."
That's so important. It's easy to get stuck in anger, but it really does eat away at us.
It does. And he points out that forgiveness is something we do for ourselves, not for the person who wronged us.
It's about choosing peace over resentment. I like that.
Well said.
Mhm.
And finally, Jonas encourages us to respond to anger with kindness. He writes, "Kindness is a strength, not a weakness. It takes courage to meet anger with compassion and understanding."
It's about breaking that cycle of negativity, not getting dragged into the drama.
Yes. And he offers some practical tips, like trying to see things from the other person's perspective, maybe responding with silence or setting boundaries to protect ourselves.
Those are some great strategies. This is making me see how Stoicism can help us not just with our own emotions, but with dealing with other people too.
Me too. It's about recognizing that we have a choice in how we respond, even when we're faced with those difficult people.
Okay, ready for Chapter 7. This one is called Additional Stoic Practices, and I'm curious to see what other nuggets of wisdom Jonas has for us. Want to take the lead?
Absolutely. Chapter 7 feels like opening a treasure chest of Stoic tools. Let's see what's inside. Okay, Chapter 7, Additional Stoic Practices. Let's dive in. Jonas starts with a powerful reminder right off the bat. Don't forget, external things hold no true value in achieving happiness. Material possessions, wealth, even your reputation, they are ultimately indifferent.
It's that core Stoic principle again, right? Focusing on what we can control, our own thoughts and actions. But it's tough. Our culture is obsessed with external validation.
It really is. We're bombarded with messages that we need more to be happy. But Stoicism flips that, saying true happiness comes from within.
It's about living by our values, striving to be our best selves, regardless of what the outside world says or rewards.
Exactly. And then Jonas talks about practicing gratitude, actively appreciating the good things we already have. Take some time each day to reflect on the things you are grateful for, your health, your loved ones. The simple pleasures of life there is always something to be thankful for, even amidst adversity.
It's so easy to focus on what we lack, what we're striving for. Gratitude is a powerful way to shift that, to appreciate the abundance that's already there.
It really is. And the more we practice gratitude, the more we notice those good things, the happier we become.
It's like retraining our brains to see the positive.
Yes. And Jonas also stresses choosing our company wisely. He says the people we surround ourselves with have a huge impact on us. Surround yourself with people who uplift and inspire you, people who embody the values you admire. Their energy will rub off on you, and you will find yourself becoming more like the people you spend the most time with.
I've heard that before, that we become the average of the 5 people we're closest to. It's a good reminder to be mindful of who we spend our time with.
It is, and he extends that to the information we consume too. Be mindful of the news, books, social media. Avoid the stuff that just brings you down.
It's about creating a healthy filter for our minds with all the noise of the modern world.
Exactly. Choose to fill your mind with things that uplift and inspire you.
This is good stuff. I'm definitely going to be thinking more about my information diet. What else?
Jonas also talks about setting boundaries with technology, which is a big one for a lot of us. Our devices are powerful tools, but they can also be incredibly addictive. Set limits on your screen time, establish tech-free zones in your home, and consciously choose when and how you engage with technology.
We've got to take back control of our time and attention, not let our devices run the show.
Exactly. Be intentional about how you use technology, make it work for you. And finally, Jonas emphasizes finding meaning and purpose in our work.
It's about aligning our careers with our values, using our work to contribute something positive to the world.
Precisely. He says, work can be a source of great satisfaction and fulfillment, but it can also be a source of stress and frustration. The key is to find work that aligns with your values and gives you a sense of purpose.
Finding that sweet spot where our passions and skills meet a desire to make a difference. Okay, that was chapter 7. Lots to think about there.
It really was. Now, chapter 8. Situational practices. How to handle yourself when fate challenges you. This sounds interesting. How did the Stoics deal with those curveballs life throws?
Let's find out. This is an area where I think Stoicism can be incredibly helpful.
Absolutely. Jonas starts by saying, life is full of challenges. No matter how hard we try to avoid them, sooner or later we will face setbacks, disappointments, and losses. The good news is that Stoicism offers a powerful framework for navigating these difficult experiences with grace and resilience.
I love that reframing. Instead of dreading challenges, we can see them as opportunities. Like that tree analogy, the wind bends the branches but strengthens the roots.
Exactly. And Jonas reminds us that we can't control everything that happens to us. The Stoics understood that we cannot control external events, but we can control our own thoughts, emotions, and actions. This is where our true power lies.
That focus on what we can influence, that's so key. But what are some practical ways to do that when we're faced with those tough situations?
Well, first, Jonas emphasizes accepting what is. He writes, when faced with a difficult situation, the first step is to acknowledge reality as it is, not as you wish it to be.
It's about facing the truth head on, even when it's painful.
Yes, it's about letting go of that struggle against reality and choosing to align ourselves with it instead.
I can see how powerful that could be, but also how challenging, especially when we're hurting.
It is tough, but Jonas reminds us that acceptance isn't about giving up. It's about acknowledging what's true so we can move forward with wisdom and clarity.
So it's about choosing our response, not just reacting blindly.
Exactly. And then Jonas suggests reframing our perspective. He says, instead of viewing challenges as obstacles, try to see them as opportunities for growth and learning. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this experience? How can I use this to become stronger and wiser?
It's about finding the lesson, the silver lining, even in tough situations.
Right. He reminds us that even in dark times, there's always something to be grateful for. Gratitude is a powerful antidote to negativity. Take some time each day to reflect on the things you are grateful for, even amidst adversity.
It's about consciously shifting our focus to the positive, even when it's hard.
Exactly. And always remember, we can control our thoughts, emotions, and actions. Focus on what you can influence.
It's about recognizing our own agency, choosing responses that empower us, not tear us down.
Yes. And Jonas reminds us that we're not alone in our struggles. He writes, everyone faces challenges in life. You are not alone in your suffering.
That can be so comforting to remember. It's easy to feel isolated, but everyone goes through tough times.
Exactly. Okay, that was chapter 8. Some really powerful stuff there.
I'm feeling more equipped to handle those curveballs now. What about chapter 9?
Chapter 9 is Additional Stoic Practices for Modern Life. Jonas provides some specific advice for applying Stoicism to our unique modern challenges. I want to take this one.
Absolutely. This feels super relevant. The ancient Stoics didn't have to deal with Twitter and 247 news cycles.
Right. Jonas acknowledges that right away. He talks about the constant information overload we face.
It's true, that feeling of being constantly bombarded with news, social media, everything, it's overwhelming.
And Jonas says it can lead to anxiety, stress, and a feeling of being pulled in a million directions at once.
We lose that sense of peace and focus that's so essential in Stoicism.
Exactly. So he offers some specific tips for navigating this and staying grounded in those Stoic principles.
I'm ready to hear them. What does he suggest?
First, he emphasizes carving out time for solitude and reflection. In a world that is constantly demanding our attention, it is more important than ever to create space for stillness and quiet contemplation. Make time each day to disconnect from the digital world and reconnect with yourself.
Creating a mental sanctuary, a place to step away from all the noise and reconnect with ourselves.
Yes. He suggests things like meditation, journaling, spending time in nature, anything that helps us slow down and be present.
Those are all great ways to cultivate inner peace. What else?
Well, along with solitude, Jonas talks about being mindful of the information we consume.
Being selective about what we read, watch, listen to, especially those social media feeds.
Exactly. We have the power to choose what we let into our minds.
It's like guarding our mental space from negativity and distractions. That's a constant battle these days.
It really is. Okay, next up. Setting boundaries with technology. This is huge. Our devices are powerful tools, but they can also be incredibly addictive. Set limits on your screen time, establish tech-free zones in your home, and consciously choose when and how you engage with technology.
Taking back control, not letting those devices dictate how we spend our time.
Exactly. Make technology work for you, not the other way around. And finally, Jonas talks about finding meaning and purpose in our work.
It's about aligning our careers with our values and using our work to contribute something positive to the world.
Yes. Jonas writes, work can be a source of great satisfaction and fulfillment, but it can also be a source of stress and frustration. The key is to find work that aligns with your values and gives you a sense of purpose.
It's about finding that intersection of our passions, skills, and desire to make a difference. Okay, that wraps up Chapter 9 and our journey through the Little Book of Stoicism.
It does. What an amazing journey it's been. We've covered so much ground, from the ancient roots of Stoicism to how it can help us navigate our modern lives.
I feel like I've gained so many new tools and insights for living a more resilient and fulfilling life. What resonated most with you?
For me, it was that emphasis on taking responsibility for our own happiness. True fulfillment isn't about what happens to us, it's about our inner world.
That's so true. We have the power to choose how we respond no matter what life throws at us.
Exactly. And I loved all those practical techniques that Jonas offers for managing emotions, dealing with challenging people, even finding purpose in our work.
Me too. This deep dive has given me a whole new perspective on how to live a more meaningful life. I think our listeners are going to get a lot out of this.
I hope so. It's amazing how Stoicism, this ancient philosophy, still has so much to offer us today.
It's a testament to its timelessness, isn't it? Any advice for our listeners who are just starting to explore Stoicism?
Start small. Pick one or two practices that resonate with you and try incorporating them into your life. Don't try to change everything at once.
Great advice. And be patient. Stoicism is a journey, not a race. There will be bumps along the way, but keep practicing, keep learning.
Beautifully said. And remember, you're not alone on this journey. There are so many resources out there, including Jonas's book, to guide you.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive. Thank you all for joining us on this exploration of Stoicism.
And remember, as Epictetus said, the key is to keep company only with people who uplift you, whose presence calls forth your best. Surround yourself with good people, practice those Stoic virtues, and keep striving to live a life of virtue and fulfillment.
Until next time, farewell.